Discover the heart-wrenching truth. My unexpected journey from shame to empowerment in 30 days. Sarah Thompson was an unseen force, a janitor scrubbing floors after the last bell rang in a small Ohio town. Each swipe of her mop was a painful reminder of what could have been. Once a bright and ambitious student, her dreams shriveled under her family's heavy expectations, morphing into deadlines and overdue bills that clung to her like a suffocating fog. She peered into the classroom she vacuumed after hours, memories whispering promises she dared not chase. Now, at 35, she hovered on the brink of desperation, wondering where her vibrant spirit had gone. Then one evening, while sorting through the cobwebs of her grandfather's attic, she stumbled upon a weathered journal. Its pages were filled with ink-stained aspirations of a scientist unrecognized. Reading through the smudged words, Sarah felt an electric stir, a flicker of empowerment igniting her chest. How could she have forgotten that her roots were tangled in ambition? His struggles mirrored her own, barriers hidden behind societal labels that limited dreamers, both past and present. It was time to honor him, to reclaim the narrative that layered over her life. With a rush of determination, she enrolled in community college, but she walked into the lecture hall as if stepping into a whirlwind. Confronted by professors who viewed her scrappy resolve with disdain, self-doubt began to seep back into her bones. The murmurs of their condescension gnawed at her confidence, echoing her father's sighs of disapproval at home. "You're just a janitor," he often muttered, his worries morphing into chains that threatened to drag her back into obscurity. She was caught in a relentless cycle, juggling her job while navigating complex coursework. Pages of notes became blurred under the weight of exhaustion, and late-night cramming blurred lines between exhaustion and despair. Her muscles tightened as the clock ticked, each minute amplifying doubt. Would she ever fit in? The other students radiated confidence, and with every hesitant question, she felt smaller, invisible again. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In her solitude, however, unexpected friendships began to bloom among a diverse group of classmates. Together they shared laughter, late-night study sessions, and even fears, casting a light on the struggles that seeped through her defenses. But just as the world of academia began to feel like a sanctuary, her father's health faltered further, spiraling in and out of consciousness. In moments of quiet desperation, she stared at her grandfather's journal. Would he want her to sacrifice what could be for the obligations she felt entangled in? The conflict suffocated her. She felt torn, grappling with the anguish of familial duty weighed against the potential of the life she always wanted. A pivotal presentation loomed ahead, a moment that could either anchor her dreams or drown them under pressure. Anxiety carried a familiar taste, bitter with the fear that her family's expectations could trap her again. She needed to make the choice. Teetering on the edge of transformation, Sarah could feel the stakes rising. Her heart raced, her mind storming with questions. Could she truly reclaim her legacy, or was she destined to remain a shadow of what could have been? The promise of empowerment hung like smoke, just out of reach, but she gripped her grandfather's journal tightly, the answer still elusive, waiting to be discovered. The day of the presentation arrived, unyielding and suffocating like the oppressive humidity of an Ohio summer. Sarah stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her blouse, one she had found on discount, a small victory among countless sacrifices. Yet, her reflection could not dispel the fear that clung to her like a shadow. Would she convey her ideas clearly? Would they listen? With each thought, she felt the pressure build, an avalanche poised to crush her beneath expectations. As she entered the lecture hall, she felt the collective energy of her classmates, some nervously shuffling papers, others resolutely reviewing notes. Yet Sarah felt like an island adrift in uncertainty, her resolve wavering. The presentation was a chance to showcase her research, her understanding of protein synthesis, a topic that had gradually become a lifeline, intertwining her grandfather's dreams with her own. And yet, moments of intimacy with those shared aspirations collided with the harsh judgment of her professors. When her time came, she took a deep breath, placing her notebook on the podium, the familiar smell of ink and paper both comforting and daunting. Their eyes bore into her, dissecting every quiver and hesitation. Hello, she began, her voice a fragile vessel on a stormy sea. My name is Sarah Thompson, and today I'm going to talk about... As she spoke, she felt pieces of herself spill forth anxiously like a floodgate bursting. She transcended the role of a janitor in that moment, carving a path toward academia, scrabbling against the tide of doubt. She could feel it, the skepticism in the room wavering, twisting under the weight of her words. Her passion ignited the slide presentation, images of molecular structures, graphs depicting her findings. With every provided study and connection she made, Sarah's confidence rippled outward. She sensed her classmates pondering rather than judging, their ideas merging with hers in spaces crafted wittingly by the collective spirit of learning. The nervous energy began to transpose into eagerness as she observed their shifting expressions. And then it happened, the question that struck like a bolt from the blue. How do you reconcile your responsibilities as a janitor with your ambitions? The voice, layered with undertones of condescension, came from Professor Malone, eyes narrowed with challenge. Her heart sank momentarily, caught off guard by the brute nature of the inquiry. This was not merely about academia, it was personal. How could he trivialize the journey she was on? Anger swirled within her, but as the tension pulsated, it morphed into clarity. Instead of cowering under his gaze, something fierce ignited inside her. Being a janitor has shaped my resilience, Sarah stated firmly, standing taller than she ever had. It has given me a unique perspective. I see the world differently. The effort I put into my job mirrors my dedication in the classroom. The atmosphere in the hall shifted. Those in attendance sat up, and for the first time, she felt seen. In that instant, she was no longer just a janitor. She was a bridge between realities, each swipe of her mop now transformed into a brush with potential, each empty classroom a reminder that education is a right, not a privilege. As she finished her presentation, the applause came as a sweet symphony, undeniable and liberating. She felt ghosts of self-doubt evaporate, replaced with the dawning realization that she could harness both aspects of her life. They were strands in the same intricate tapestry. However, the moment was fleeting. Her phone vibrated in her pocket, a message from her mother layered in urgency about her father's condition. Anxiety clawed its way back. While Sarah emerged from self-doubt, another storm loomed. Could she balance this newfound empowerment with the responsibilities that awaited her at home? Her grandfather's journal opened in her mind. The answer flickered again, but clarity remained elusive. With the applause still echoing in her ears, Sarah felt the magnitude of her journey expand. She shared a lingering gaze with Professor Malone, both acknowledgement and challenge reflected back at her. She had faced the storm and weathered it, yet more challenges prepared themselves on the horizon. What awaited her now was a confrontation between the personal and the professional, and a decision that would determine her fate as both dreamer and caretaker loomed ever close. The ride home from the university was a blur, a cacophony of thoughts swirling in her mind. Each passing street seemed to whisper the weight of her dual existence. Sarah's heart raced, conflicted between the triumph of her presentation and the urgency of her father's condition. As she stepped into the house, the scent of old wood mixed with stale hospital air hit her instantly. The light was dim, and the ambiance was filled with the muted sounds of her mother chatting to her father, who lay in the living room, propped on the couch, visibly fatigued. The moment she entered, her mother's eyes brightened with an emotion that wavered between relief and dread. "Sarah," her mother called, a blend of hope in her voice. "How did it go?" I presented about protein synthesis," Sarah replied, half breathless, still caught in the thrill of her words. But as soon as she met her father's gaze, the weight of her endeavor came crashing back. The specter of the necessary conversation loomed close. Could she share her victory while facing the reality that shaped their lives? Her father, once vibrant, was now frail, his spirit flickering like a candle struggling against the wind. Despite the medical updates blistering through the weeks, sitting with their shared silence felt unbearable. The dichotomy of her daily efforts and the struggles at home felt sharper than ever. "Your presentation was important, honey," her mother urged as they moved to the kitchen where she began preparing dinner. "I've been thinking, maybe your dad can help you with your studies more. Maybe that will motivate him to fight." The idea landed like a well-aimed arrow, etching into Sarah's mind as something close to hope, yet heavy with implications. Could she bear the responsibility of teaching him? What if the very act of hoping stoked flames too dangerous to bear? This duality tugged at her. How could she bring light into darkness without being consumed by it? "Can I take a moment to talk to him?" she asked her mother, who nodded with a small smile, sensing the need for connection amidst the family chaos. Sarah approached the couch, where her father's eyes regained a measure of brightness. They exchanged words, her updates, his struggles. She felt the words flowing, sharing the thrill of academia, how every cell seemed to anchor her closer to resilience. "Your heart is strong," he whispered, voice frail. "But it's okay to feel tired. You don't have to carry it all." His understanding, a balm, yet it kindled a flicker of resentment. Did he not see that the weight was already too familiar to her? Her fingers interlaced with his, a bridge built with love and obligation. She began to question. Was empowerment a journey she could share without tearing them both apart? Frustration gnawed at her, an angry whisper in her heart. The rise in her professional life thrummed against the realities that shaped her at home. Could she separate ambition from care? Or was she chasing dreams that could ultimately pull her away? On the surface, she was a janitor and a budding scientist, yet a deeper part wrestled with what it meant to be a daughter. The clarity she craved slipped further away. Inspiration fed ambition, but she was left juggling fears with aspirations, wondering when or if these pieces could intertwine seamlessly. When her mother called them both to dinner, Sarah realized the slate was blank. So much ahead, yet each choice would leave marks. She had conquered one storm, her ambitions ignited, but the tempest of personal life stirred too. Determined thoughts surged in her mind, the confrontation now unavoidable. She felt an intense burning, a drive to decide which path to carve, to walk ahead in her newfound confidence or remain anchored to past fears. As dinner unfolded with hollow laughter and lingering glances, Sarah noticed Professor Malone's question rolling in her mind again. Her response had felt revolutionary, but now that clarity trembled. What if she could face her fears head-on while nurturing her family? But how? As she gazed across the table at her father, joy and worry mingled uncomfortably. The question lingered, like a shadow on her heart. What was the price of ambition, and would she be ready to pay it? The intensity of the moment wrapped around her, setting the stage for decisions that would determine not only her future, but the very essence of her relationship with her family. The moment of reflection was interrupted by a ping from her phone, a message from Professor Malone inviting her to discuss her presentation further. Another layer in the intricate web she was weaving. It could mean mentorship, opportunity, or more pressure. With her heart racing, she glanced back at her father, wrestling with the choices sprawling ahead. Did she dare step further into the unknown? The daunting journey lay on the horizon, fraught with new responsibilities and difficult truths, leaving her to wonder whether she was truly ready to seize what awaited her. In the ensuing days, a fragile rhythm emerged in Sarah's life, a push and pull between her responsibilities at home and her relentless pursuit of academic excellence. Mornings began with the solemn ritual of tending to her father, checking in on his comfort and feeding him vitality-laden smoothies, a concoction of hope mixed with a mother's insistence. Each day, she sensed his struggle to grasp the simplest concepts. It ripped at her heart, but ignited a fire within her. As she mingled with classmates at the university, their conversations felt distant, like echoes of a joyful symphony she was no longer a part of. Professor Malone's encouragement lingered at the peripheries of her mind. He offered a chance, a mentoring opportunity that could propel her academic journey. But the implications were taxing. Would stepping into that new role truly bolster her struggling family, or would it further heighten her internal chaos? During a particularly heavy evening, she returned from the university and found her mother sitting silently on the porch, gazing at the fading sky. The wind whispered through the trees, but the silence between them was a chasm. Sarah felt the need to connect, to bridge their shared loss with words that floated somewhere between unspoken fears and strained hopes. "Mom, we could find someone to help Dad with his learning. I was thinking—" Her voice faltered, twisting with uncertainty. She wanted to scream that she couldn't carry all the burdens. However, facing her mother's unyielding gaze shifted her resolve. "It's not just about academics, Sarah," her mother interjected, her voice thick with unspoken emotions. "He needs us now more than ever. We can't let our struggles pull us apart." A resolve settled in Sarah's chest. No matter how difficult it became, she had to dive deeper into her studies and simultaneously extend her hand to her father. It would require sacrifice, but it could bridge the gaps between them, making their family unit resilient rather than fractured. As days turned into weeks, she spent evenings poring over textbooks and online research, determined to find pedagogical techniques that might resonate with her father. Each new method she tried became an extension of herself, confronting both her fears and the truth of her father's condition. The resentment she wrestled with morphed into profound empathy as she watched her father navigate through fragments of memories and understanding. Filling the gaps of knowledge, this was her new mission. The answer, she discovered, lay within the very struggle they both faced. Teaching her father entailed not just conveying facts, but embracing his battle, sharing stories of her university experiences that intertwined with the science of life and hope. She aimed to kindle the same spirit in him, illuminating the way to fight against the shadows. Yet every lesson taught was coupled with questions that gnawed at her. Was this enough? Would they emerge from the dark times? Could the knowledge she imparted ignite a spark in her father, allowing him to reclaim fragments of his former self? The weight of potential failure loomed heavy, yet the yearning for something more propelled her forward. The anticipation built within her as she prepared for her next meeting with Professor Malone. She could share not only her academic growth, but also insights gleaned from her dual role. Would he see the potential, the lessons in resilience, and her determination? Sarah decided that the meeting wouldn't just be a transactional exchange, it would be a moment of truth. On the eve of the meeting, anxiety curled in her stomach. The stakes felt monumental, far beyond a mere evaluation of her presentation. Sarah understood that her ambitions now danced perilously close to the frail thread binding her family life. And once it was cut, would there be a way back? As she stared at herself in the mirror, she decided that the journey must continue. Whatever lay ahead at that meeting with Professor Malone would set a tone, one that not only defined her career path, but perhaps, unbeknownst to her, also shaped her very essence. With newfound determination, she breathed deeply, readying herself for the confrontation of academic ambition intertwined with her dual existence. She opened her phone to check the background of Professor Malone once more. A chilling realization struck her. The personal stakes of this meeting were far more personal than she had anticipated. The moment of reckoning was nigh, and she could feel the tension pulling taut. Would she embrace the challenge and possibly shatter the confines of her fears, Or would she find herself overwhelmed by the weight of expectation? As the door opened to tomorrow, Sarah prepared to step into her truth, fully exposed, ready to embrace the vulnerability that came with growing. Would she be ready to face not just academic scrutiny, but the hidden edges of her own heart? As the dawn broke, Sarah felt the weight of the day settle on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. Today was the meeting that would potentially reshape her future. The long hours spent preparing her presentation echoed in her mind as she stood in front of the mirror, her reflection glowing with a mix of determination and vulnerability. She inhaled sharply, grounding herself in the moment. This was more than an academic assessment. It represented the culmination of her efforts, a test that blended her knowledge with her personal journey. Arriving at the university, the familiar sounds of laughter and conversation from her peers enveloped her, a stark contrast to the solitude she often felt at home. The campus seemed alive, bursting with energy that felt both exhilarating and alien. She tried to dismiss the wave of envy that washed over her, friends forging ahead unburdened by the gravity of responsibility. Was she sacrificing too much? As she approached Professor Malone's office, her heart raced. This meeting felt like entering the lion's den, a space that could either affirm her or dismantle her fragile sense of self. She knocked lightly, the sound echoing in her ears like a drumbeat of impending judgment. "Come in," came his inviting voice. Stepping inside, Sarah took a moment to absorb the space, cluttered yet organized, bookshelves filled to the brim with volumes she longed to read. Professor Malone sat behind his desk, a warm smile enveloping his features. It made her feel slightly at ease, though the shimmer of fear lingered. "Ah, Sarah, I've been looking forward to our discussion," he said, gesturing for her to sit. As she settled into the chair, she could feel her pulse quicken. The vulnerability of her dual existence loomed large, keeping her focused as she recalled her father's struggle. She had come too far to let that diminish her drive. "Thank you for this opportunity, Professor. I've worked hard to prepare and share what I've learned from my studies and my experiences," she began, her voice steady despite the fluttering inside her chest. During her presentation, she wove in anecdotes from her time spent teaching her father, illustrating how each attempt to connect with him had morphed into a lesson both in patience and resilience. With every word, she peeled back layers of her journey, revealing the depth of her struggles and her heart. As she concluded, a weight lifted, and she caught a glimpse of approval in Professor Malone's eyes. "That's quite insightful, Sarah. It's clear you're not just a student. You're becoming a teacher in ways you didn't foresee. But let's dive deeper. How do you see this shaping your vision moving forward?" Her heart thudded loudly in her chest. How, indeed. She had spent so long pushing through adversity that articulating her aspirations felt daunting. "I want to create an approach that integrates emotional understanding with educational growth, both for my father and others experiencing similar challenges. It's about more than just knowledge. It's about connection." The moment hung between them, and for the first time she felt empowered, like the fog that sat heavy in her mind was beginning to clear. Professor Malone leaned back, studying her. "You're on a path that can redefine education for many, Sarah. But understand this, embracing your struggles is as important as your achievements. They shape your narrative." Sarah nodded, a flurry of thoughts racing through her mind. Was it possible that her tumultuous journey could empower others? Could she enact change with the lessons learned from her father? The meeting concluded, leaving Sarah with a rush of adrenaline. Instead of fear, she felt exhilarated and perhaps even ready to take on more than she thought she could bear. Yet, the reality of her commitments at home began to weave a pattern of anxiety that tugged at her resolve. As she stepped outside, the world looked different. The potential for something greater lying ahead was inviting. But with prospects came the threat of overwhelming responsibilities. Her phone pinged with a notification, a reminder of her father's evening appointment for his therapy session. She glanced at it and felt a twinge in her chest. Was there any way she could balance her growing ambitions with the increasing demands at home? The tightrope she walked became evident. The nexus of her father's needs and her burgeoning academic career had reached a critical juncture. As she walked through the thrumming campus, something stirred within her, a burgeoning recognition that she needed to confront not only her ambitions, but also the unyielding realities of her family life. As she reached her car, she felt a strange duality within. Stepping into a new role while tethered by obligation was a complex dance. How could she forge ahead without losing sight of what truly mattered? Just then, another message popped up, this time from her mother. "Can we talk soon?" A simple question laden with gravity. The thread of tension pulled taut once more as Sarah wondered whether this conversation would change everything she had just started to build, perhaps setting the stage for a different kind of reckoning. Would her mother understand her ambition, or would the conversation drag them deeper into their shared loss? The door to a defining choice was ajar, and Sarah stood staring, ready to step into yet another unknown. The car hummed beneath Sarah as she started the engine, an indifferent companion to the storm brewing within her. The message from her mother lingered heavily in the confines of her mind, pressing down like a weight she could neither ignore nor articulate. In her heart, something had shifted, a realization that this conversation could either undermine her newfound drive or propel her forward into unfamiliar territory. Navigating the familiar route, each turn felt like a leap across an abyss of uncertainty. The responsibilities at home lurked like shadows, threatening to engulf the brightness that had recently sparked within her. Could she really balance her father's needs and her budding aspirations? Or was her journey destined to stall under the burden of familial expectations? Pulling into the driveway, Sarah parked with purpose but lingered for a moment, staring at the house that bore witness to countless memories and unspoken struggles. The divided existence she led, one foot in the past and the other inching toward a hopeful future, began to wear on her. Life had handed her a script filled with heavy dialogue and complex characters, each vying for significance in the narrative of her growth. After a deep breath, she stepped inside to the sound of her mother's soft voice filtering through the house. "Sarah, is that you?" The warmth of her mother's tone always held a sense of comfort, but today it also carried an undercurrent of tension. "Yeah, I'm here," Sarah called back, trying to shake off the uncertainty clinging to her. As she entered the kitchen, the sight of her mother felt grounding, yet a flicker of apprehension coiled in her stomach. The table sat abandoned, the remnants of breakfast still scattered about, a strong reminder of their shared life, the routines crafted amid their grief. "How was your day?" her mother asked, pouring herself a cup of tea, the steam spiraling up like the rising anxiety in Sarah's chest. "It was enlightening." Sarah hesitated, searching for the right words, but the weight of her mother's expectations loomed large. Her mother's eyes held a familiarity she found both comforting and suffocating. "Tell me about it. You always have so much on your mind these days," her mother encouraged, a hint of curiosity peeking in her tone. "What if I want to do more than just get through each day?" The words escaped Sarah before she could pull them back, raw and unfiltered, an exhilaration that ignited a spark behind her fearful facade. Her mother paused, the teacup trembling slightly in her grasp. "More than this?" she asked gently, though her expression flared with apprehension. "Yes," Sarah forged ahead, compelled by an urgency that bubbled to the surface. "I want to pursue a different kind of education, a way to integrate what I've learned from Dad's struggles into my studies. It's not just for me. It could help others." Silence enveloped the kitchen, thick and tangible. Sarah watched her mother process the information, searching for acceptance, for clarity amidst the swirling chaos. The dream she had held was now exposed, and with it came the fear of judgment. "I don't want to lose you in all of this, Sarah. You need to understand where my worries come from," her mother finally replied, her voice ripe with maternal instinct. "I'm not trying to leave," Sarah rushed to assure her, "but I need to step beyond what we've always known. If I don't take this chance, I might regret it forever." Her heart raced as emotions surged, mixing desperation with a profound need for validation. The walls closed in around them as her mother's gaze met hers, revealing a shared pain that transcended words. Would her mother recognize the ambition pulsing through her, or would fear tighten its grip further on their lives? "Can you trust me to find my own way, Mom?" The question hung between them, laden with meaning and possibility. It was a plea for understanding, a reach toward what lay beyond the constraints of their shared grief. In that moment, a new resolve ignited within Sarah, one that pushed against the boundaries set by both her father's illness and the history intertwined with her mother's fears. She realized she couldn't enter this new phase of her life burdened by silence. She must confront the unspoken truths and embrace the healing power of vulnerability. But as the conversation unfolded, a flicker of doubt nagged at the edges of her mind. Was confronting these familial challenges the true journey ahead? Would she emerge stronger or shatter the delicate fabric that held her family together? Barely registering her mother's response, an unexpected urgency to act surged in her veins. She felt that she was standing at the precipice of transformation, yet she needed more than validation. She needed to break free of the binding fears defining their lives. Just then, her phone pinged again, cutting through the tension filling the room. This one was a message from Professor Malone. "I believe you're just beginning, Sarah. Let's discuss your vision further." With the offer of mentorship looming over her, Sarah faced a paradox: the call of ambition against the backdrop of familial love and expectation. The path before her diverged sharply, and a flicker of determination sparked within her. Could she redefine her narrative while respecting the legacy of struggles past? Or would she falter under the pressure of expectation? Her mind raced, still balancing the weight of emotional ties against ambitions waiting to be explored. The conversation with her mother hung suspended, and Sarah felt an undeniable sense of urgency to forge ahead into the unknown, perhaps at a cost she had yet to comprehend. The moment of decision loomed, and Sarah knew that whatever choice she made next could alter the pulse of her life forever. Would stepping into her own power shatter the fragile bond they had built, or could it ignite a new beginning for them all? The tension in the kitchen hung thick, and Sarah could almost feel the invisible thread tugging between her and her mother, fraying at the edges with every heartbeat. As the sound of her phone faded into the sudden quiet, she could feel the weight of the unanswered questions pressing down on her. "Sarah," her mother finally said, her voice barely above a whisper, "are you sure about this? About pursuing a path that may not align with what we've known?" The flicker of concern in her eyes was like a magnet, pulling at Sarah's own fears and insecurities. "I am sure. I can't keep living for someone else's expectations," Sarah replied, her voice trembling slightly. Despite her determination, doubt was a persistent shadow in her mind. How could she reassure her mother when uncertainty gnawed at her own heart? "I just don't want you to regret leaving all this behind," her mother pressed, gesturing to their home, their lives, as if they could together encapsulate a lifetime of love, pain, and struggle. "It's not leaving it behind. It's bringing it with me," Sarah countered, desperation creeping in as a wave of emotion washed over her. "If I can channel everything we've faced into something meaningful, I know, it could help others." The clarity behind her words sparked the air between them, igniting a mix of excitement and fear. In that moment, Sarah reminded herself of Professor Malone's confidence in her, a beacon of validation amidst the tumult. She imagined the conversations that awaited her, seasoned with guidance and insight, and her heart surged with hope. "Mom, I have to start this journey. I need to see where it leads me." Her mother looked as if she were searching for the right phrase to respond, sifting through their shared history, years filled with compromises made in the shadows of grief. "What if it takes you away from here, from us?" she finally asked, the worry cracking the foundation of her resolve. "I won't let it," Sarah urged, a newfound tenacity rising within her. "But if I don't take this chance, I'll wonder what could have been, and that's a burden I can't carry." The truth of her own words struck a chord deep inside. The idea of remaining static, of failing to push against the coils of familial loyalty, sent a shiver down her spine. Her mother fell quiet, uncertainty crossing her features. Sarah seized the moment, navigating through the complexities of their relationship and the choices that lay ahead. "We can redefine our family dynamic, Mom. I want you to be proud of me. I want us to be proud of each other." As the silence resumed, Sarah felt a rustling within her, a newfound strength laced with vulnerability. She sought to draw on the threads of their past, wrapping them around her expression of growth rather than restraint. A glimmer of acceptance flickered in her mother's eyes, and in that exchange, a barrier began to dissolve. "I just hope you know that every step you take carries a piece of us with you," her mother whispered, an olive branch of understanding. "I know," Sarah smiled through the uncertainty, feeling the warmth of connection amidst the shifting tides. "And I'll carry that with me, always." The conversation shifted as they moved into the living room, their voices rising with spirited discussion about Sarah's vision. Engaging her mother in the details provided a sense of unity as they started to intertwine their individual dreams with acceptance. But beneath the surface, Sarah could still feel the latent tension coalescing. The validation she sought from her mother wasn't just a bridge to her own ambitions, it was also a stepping stone toward who she wanted to become. A compass guiding her closer to her dreams but still tethered to familial loyalty. While her mother's nods echoed with tentative approval, doubt subtly lodged itself in Sarah's mind. What if this leap of faith fractured the delicate balance they had built? As they delved deeper into the conversation, Sarah felt a renewed sense of commitment surge within her. "The past has taught me so much, Mom. I want to be that person who can make a difference." With every conviction she expressed, an old fear slipped further away. Yet, just as the conversation reached an encouraging crescendo, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a notification from the college, an invitation to present her ideas at a seminar. Sarah's breath hitched as a jolt of anxiety coursed through her. Was she truly ready to step into the light so boldly? "Mom, I just got invited to present my ideas." The thrill bubbling inside her clashed with an overwhelming fear of failure. "What are you going to do?" her mother asked, her curiosity piquing amidst the currents of emotion swirling in the room. Sarah bit her lip, contemplating the implications of this new opportunity. She was teetering on the edge of a decision that could redefine everything. Could she embrace the fear and use it as fuel to propel her forward? The notion resonated within her, igniting yet another wave of determination. "I have to do it. I can't let this moment pass me by." As she stood at the juncture of ambition and vulnerability, a sense of clarity gripped her. It was time to face the reality of what she had just committed to, both to her dreams and her family. Even as excitement enveloped her, uncertainty remained, weaving its way through the creases of her heart. Would this presentation become the catalyst for her dreams, or the fracturing point of her familial bonds? Tomorrow beckoned with the promise of revelation and empowerment, yet deep down, Sarah understood the road ahead bore more challenges than she could foresee. She took a deep breath, ready to embrace both the path of dreams and the weight of responsibility, determined to emerge stronger, come what may. But one haunting question lingered in her mind. What would it take to rise above the fears binding her, and how would she confront the possibility that her ambitions could come at a cost to those she loved most? The following day dawned with a weight Sarah couldn't shake. As sunlight streamed through her bedroom window, illuminating piles of notes and books spread across her desk, a potent blend of excitement and fear burrowed into her stomach. Today was the day she would step forward into the unknown. The seminar represented everything she had been yearning for, a chance to merge her past experiences with newfound ambitions. Yet, doubt, like a silent specter, lurked in the corners of her mind. With each passing minute, anticipation gnawed at her resolve. The fragile peace she had momentarily established with her mother felt as fleeting as the morning mist. What if, by chasing her dreams, she inadvertently shattered their budding understanding? The thought almost made her hesitate. Almost. Determined to quell the rising tide of anxiety, Sarah sat cross-legged on her bed, notes cradled in her lap. She remembered the discussions with Professor Malone, the encouragement he offered, the insights he shared about using pain as a catalyst for change. She could share her story, the challenges, the heartaches, and the perseverance that birthed her dreams. Her voice could resonate with others, instilling the kind of hope that had once seemed elusive. "Come on, Sarah," she murmured to herself, flinging her notes aside. "You can't afford to let fear dictate your path." It was time to take charge. With a rapid-fire rhythm, she began to jot down her key points. Notes filled with fervent scribbles echoed her journey, her family history, the struggles she'd faced, and the deep desire to impact others grappling with similar challenges. Each word breathed validation into her purpose, slowly refining her vision and revealing the strength hidden beneath her insecurity. As she prepared, Sarah ventured beyond her comfort zone, sending a quick text to Professor Malone. "I'm anxious about today. Any last-minute tips?" The response was swift, yet calming. "You're ready. Trust your story. It's powerful." Reorganized in her thoughts, Sarah made her way to the campus auditorium, feet heavy, yet purposeful. The clamor of fellow students stirred a sense of camaraderie. Familiar faces brought fleeting comfort, but underneath, tension twisted in her chest. Upon stepping into the auditorium, the buzz of conversation faded into a mural of silence as she approached the stage. The dim lights brightened her path forward, yet they felt blinding, almost daunting. She took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of polished wood, and anticipation mingled with uncertainty. Movement drew her gaze to the audience, where her mother sat, trying to blend in, but incapable of hiding her supportive smile. In that instant, a mixture of fear and pride flooded Sarah's system. There was her anchor, but also the source of her doubt. As the event commenced, speakers before her shared their talks with varying degrees of expertise. Some captivated the room seamlessly, while others struggled. Each performance heightened Sarah's sense of scrutiny, leading her to question her own validity in this space. What could she possibly contribute that was worth listening to? Moving closer to the stage, the realization struck her. The seminar wasn't just a platform. It was a crucible, shaping her resilience. She was here to be seen, to share her narrative and help others navigate through their pain. Finally, her name echoed through the auditorium, pulling her emotions to the surface. Sarah stepped to the podium, a cacophony of heartbeats thrumming in her ears. Behind her, her mother offered a reassuring nod, anchoring her to an essence of courage, embraced in love. As she began talking, her voice quivered at first, but with every word, she found strength. She unfolded her story, weaving through her family's struggles and her aspirations with unfiltered honesty. The words felt liberating on her tongue, unearthing fears she had long buried. With a passionate vigor, she shared how she had transformed her experiences into visions for positive difference. But even as she exposed her truth, a chilling thought crept in. Would her words be received warmly, or would they incur doubt and disapproval? As she neared the end of her presentation, she sensed the audience's reactions, some on the verge of tears, others nodding in understanding. For the first time, she recognized the power that lay within vulnerability. Yet, as applause erupted around her, one voice cut through. It was a professor she had often admired but never directly spoken to, a formidable figure whose piercing question reverberated unexpectedly. What if your journey creates a chasm between you and those who loved you most? The weight of those words suspended in the air like a heavy cloud, forcing Sarah to confront the intersection of her aspirations and her family ties. Would sharing her story catalyze acceptance and healing, or push her exhausted familial bond to the brink? In that moment of truth, Sarah realized that the way forward was not just about ambition. It was about navigating the delicate dance between growth and loyalty, between hope and fear. As her heart raced with potential turmoil, the response to that question loomed larger than any applause. How would she redefine her relationship with her family while walking this path? The journey was just beginning, and now it was clearer than ever. The fears binding her would challenge her deeply, testing every fiber of her resolve. But that knowledge was grounding. It was both terrifying and exhilarating. A new chapter of profound personal transformation unfurled, and Sarah was ready to face it. As she processed the aftermath of her presentation, a staggering question surfaced. Could she solidify her identity amidst conflicting loyalties, or was she destined to choose? The aftermath of her presentation lingered like a taut string, vibrating with the echoes of her words and the weight of the professor's question. Sarah stepped off the stage, her pulse still racing as she navigated through a sea of congratulatory remarks and curious faces. Each praise felt like a double-edged sword. They bolstered her confidence while simultaneously tugging at her unresolved fears. She smiled, nodding politely, but inside, a storm raged. Had she truly been authentic, or was she merely performing? The idea of being seen as a vulnerable individual, exposed and raw, both exhilarated and terrified her. In the familiar knot of anxiety that formed in her stomach, she recognized the specter of self-doubt rising again. "Sarah, that was amazing," a classmate beamed as they approached her. "You really opened up. I felt everything you said." For a moment, Sarah basked in the affirmation. Yet beneath the surface, the worry nagged at her. What if her openness created distance, especially with her mother? The auditorium was starting to empty, and as the chatter became a distant hum, Sarah sought a quiet corner, desperate to gather her thoughts. She pulled out her phone and opened the text thread with Professor Malone. "Thank you for your support. I hope I didn't say too much." His reply came swiftly, filled with warmth. "Your story has power. Remember, vulnerability invites connection. Embrace the uncertainty. It's part of growth." Embrace the uncertainty. His words danced in her mind, illuminating the shadows that had nestled deep within her. What if she allowed herself to truly accept the risk of pursuing her ambitions, even if it meant redefining her relationship with her mother? The prospect was daunting, yet something within her shifted. An ember of defiance sparked. This was her life. Sarah left the auditorium with a newfound determination. She needed to have a conversation with her mother, one that would reveal the depths of her aspirations and fears. Could she articulate this broader vision for her life without it feeling like betrayal? The thought settled in her heart like a whisper, coaxing her forward. Driving home, Sarah struggled to piece her feelings together. Each commotion of the engine matched the chaotic rhythm of her thoughts. Would she ever feel whole again if parts of her family remained in the dark? She thought about the sacrifices made by those she loved. Chasing her true self risked leading to disconnection and ultimately, longing. Upon arriving home, a familiar warmth greeted her, but the space felt tense, as though her presentation had cast a shadow. Her mother was in the kitchen, surrounded by the comforting aromas of dinner preparation, yet her expression revealed the weight of an unspoken conversation. "Hey, Mom," Sarah called softly. "Can we talk?" Her mother turned, uncertainty flickering across her face. "I watched you today, you know. I was proud, but I also couldn't help but worry." It was like a tightrope walk, Sarah balancing on the line between honesty and fear, yet compelled to stride forth. "I know. It's important to me, sharing my story. But I'm terrified of driving a wedge between us." Her mother paused, the tension in the air palpable. "And I'm afraid of losing you to this new version of yourself." With each exchanged glance, something shifted. They both stood on the precipice, ready for a deeper dialogue, yet hesitant to leap into the unknown. The conversation swelled, leaving Sarah feeling exposed. They lingered in discomfort, digressing to the past, dipping into family stories that once seemed trivial. Caroline's aspirations, her own ambitions, and the fear woven between them surfaced like the jagged edges of stones in turbulent water. "I just don't want you to forget where you came from," her mother finally spoke, her voice trembling with the weight of devotion. "You're growing, and that scares me. What if it's not who I raised you to be?" "I have to grow, Mom, but I want you by my side while I do it." In that moment, Sarah realized that the journey was as much about her individual evolution as it was about reconciling their relationship. To move forward, she needed to embrace not just her own fears, but also understand her mother's. As they stood in the silence that followed, a flicker of hope emerged. Perhaps vulnerability could be the bridge instead of a barrier. Yet, as she turned to leave the kitchen, lingering doubts gnawed at her resolve. Had she truly made headway, or merely scratched the surface? Could she transform vulnerability into empowerment for both herself and her family? These questions circled in her mind, creating an internal labyrinth while she searched for clarity. Would she be able to navigate this complex emotional terrain, or would it unravel her sense of self? With each step toward a potential reconciliation, she sensed the stakes rising higher than ever before. It was all about balance, navigating loyalties while embracing the path ahead. But the magnitude of that balance remained a daunting challenge, one she now recognized was hers to conquer. As Sarah pondered her next steps, a message flickered across her phone screen, pulling her back into the moment. It was from her mentor, and it read simply, "What comes next could change everything." The call to level up loomed large, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that it would demand an even greater depth of honesty. What would that entail? How could she continue to embrace her journey without losing what mattered most? The uncertainty lay bare before her, an invitation to explore the boundless potential of her evolving identity. In the weeks that followed, a palpable shift enveloped Sarah Thompson. The seminar had ignited a blazing path toward her ambitions, yet it also cast a spotlight on the tenuous threads holding her family together. As she dived into her studies like never before, pursuing avenues that could help others through education, her sense of purpose crystallized. But the fear of disconnect loomed, especially as her father's condition fluctuated, intertwining their lives yet again. Sarah's mornings began early, balancing university lectures with evenings spent teaching her father. Each lesson brought a new level of frustration, both for him and for her. The intimate struggle of simplicity entangled with the profound complexities of their relationship. Often, she found herself wrestling with emotions, doubt, insecurity, and anger blurring the lines of her resolve. But with each challenge faced, clarity emerged. She recognized that education could be a bridge between their worlds, fostering understanding amidst the hardships. She persisted, establishing a routine that held no room for excuses. Now, every evening, Sarah would sit with her father, armed with research-based techniques that transformed their sessions from frustration into discovery. With each small victory, a word recalled or a concept grasped, a sense of mutual empowerment blossomed between them. They forged a connection through shared sweat and commitment, layering their lives in a shared narrative of battling adversity together. But even as they claimed these small successes, doubts crept into Sarah's mind. Would her father's health stabilize long enough for her to fully realize her dreams? And as her academic accolades began to carve a path toward a brighter future, would her relationship with her mother reconcile with these pressing realities? She felt as though she were on the brink of something monumental, yet binding obligations tugged fiercely at her heart, threatening the delicate balance she now sought to foster. With Professor Malone's guidance looming large in her mind, she decided it was time to confront these challenges head-on. She scheduled a discussion not just about her progress, but about merging her newfound aspirations with the weight of her familial commitments. As the day approached, she felt a crescendo of anticipation and anxiety. She could extend her hand to mentor others while simultaneously exploring how to preserve the connections that mattered most, determine what it meant to be a daughter first, and an aspiring scientist second. Upon entering Malone's office, she sensed the warmth of understanding and mentorship hovering in the air. "Sarah, it's good to see you again. I've been impressed with your progress," he said, settling his gaze on her as she took a deep breath. "Thank you," she replied, heart racing with purpose. "I've been struggling to find the balance between my studies and my responsibility at home. I want to make a difference while supporting my family." Malone nodded, a wise glimmer in his eyes. "Balance is complex. Your journey involves choices that matter. Embrace the challenge." In that moment, Sarah felt a weight lift, intertwined with the realization that the very struggles she faced could be the steeling force that defined her success. A spark ignited within her as they brainstormed ways to weave her educational goals into a narrative that aided her family connections, potentially intertwining her ambitions with a collaborative wellness initiative. Her vision for an educational program began to take shape, a means to blend the nurturing of her father's recovery with broader community initiatives that could also extend academic support to families facing similar hardships. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah formalized her visions into tangible plans, integrating lessons learned alongside her father into supportive workshops and tutorials. This newfound direction rallied not only her father, but also her mother, who slowly began to engage in the conversations she had once veered from. They found moments of vulnerability burgeoning between them, filling spaces long occupied by silence. One evening, as they gathered around the kitchen table, Sarah shyly broached the subject of her upcoming initiative. "Mom, I want to integrate community workshops focusing on educational development. I believe that it could help others, and us," she said, her voice steady but threaded with hope. Her mother's brow furrowed in uncertainty, but the flicker of pride in her eyes began to shimmer. "It sounds ambitious," she mused, deliberating. "But I see where you're coming from. Maybe we could do this together." The words resonated like a heartbeat, igniting the vision with a shared spirit. It prompted Sarah to breathe deeper, knowing that they were now intertwining their lives in a fresh narrative of empowerment. Something shifted. It no longer felt like separate paths, but as if they were charting a collective future. As the lines between ambition and family blurred in the most soulful way, Sarah approached the culmination of her hard work and aspiration. The initiative took root, and community meetings followed, blossoming into a shared mission that connected families through learning and support. Weeks later, Sarah stood before those who attended, her mother by her side, both sharing their personal narratives and grappling with the intricacies of growth and connection. The audience's warmth enveloped them as she relayed their journey, the laughs exchanged, tears shed, and hurdles overcome. It was liberating. She no longer felt split between her ambition and her family, but rather belonging to both, intertwining their strengths through shared experiences. At the end of the event, a gust of applause surged around her, flooding her with exhilaration and fulfillment. The weight that had pressed on her heart began to lift, replaced with a solid understanding of what empowerment truly meant, a mutual path forged through both personal achievement and unwavering familial support. As Sarah stepped off the stage, her mother's arms enveloped her, a blend of understanding and love radiating in their connection. For the first time, there was peace in her heart. She had reclaimed her narrative without sacrificing her roots and responsibilities. It was a moment profound, beyond measure. She stood with solid confidence in her newfound identity, validated not only personally, but through the bonds she fortified within her family. The storm of doubt had melted away, leaving only clarity. Sarah had conquered the barriers that had once confined her to the shadows, standing tall, recognized not only as a daughter, but also as an emerging leader. Her journey from shame to empowerment was complete. She had vocalized her struggles, transformed her pain into progress, and anchored her vision with the unwavering love of family. Now, the horizon glimmered with boundless potential. It was time to inspire others with her story. She had triumphed, and she was ready to take the next leap. Now is the moment for you to reflect that same kind of growth. Take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these meaningful journeys alive. Comment your reactions and theories about this conclusion. Your voice matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative experience. Don't wait even one more second to share the inspiration. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.